Awesome, Frank. Well, thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited that we get to have this conversation before the holidays set in. Uh, really excited to go through how you guys have been able to leverage content to help you guys grow as part of your go to market. And then I think specifically with the outbound motion and the other sales kind of motions that you're running, how that's fueling it. I know you're very active on LinkedIn yourself, and so excited to hear how you think about content, how you think about how it plays into your sales function, and hopefully learn some good tips and tricks for the audience here today.
Yeah, sounds good. So yeah, let's dive maybe straight into the deck. So I'm gonna walk through and go over it.
Perfect. Let's do it.
Share my screen. Awesome, excellent. So yeah, just a bit about me. If somebody doesn't know who I am, so my name is Frank. I've been in software sales for over a decade. In my last gig, I had a sales team of about 50 people. Uh, and then I saw it was back sort of during the days of growth at all costs, and I thought to myself essentially that there's essentially a better way of doing things, meaning um, fewer individuals driving that pipeline. And just to give you an idea, guys, back in the days, I had a sales team of 50 people, and today my sales team of 6 people does more output or more pipeline. So times have massively changed. So yeah, system building and AIs, LLMs, everything kicked in, 2 years ago, and it made it possible essentially to drive more output with significantly fewer humans. So yeah, that's a bit about me. There's a lot of different sort of forges that are going to go into in a bit. But to give you an idea of what the Forge is all about, we essentially are in the sales technology space. Typically, we put this in category of sales engagement. Essentially, we help companies deliver a pipeline, and that's through cold email and LinkedIn. And we do outbound only, so meaning outreach. We don't do any of the inbound stuff like some softwares do. Not yet, maybe next year. We are PLG business. That means majority of demand is PLG based, meaning you can go sign up. It's a low ticket product. But the interesting bit about us, even though we are hardcore PLG, we still do over 500 demos on a monthly basis. Pretty consistent, sometimes 600, sometimes more or less. We're definitely looking to push that next year to K on a monthly basis. 70% of the demand does come from inbound, or what we would attribute to inbound, and about 30% is outbound related. But these days, we just like when you look at sort of kind of topics like attribution, you can kind of attribute a particular, let's go demo or lead based on first touch attribution or last touch attribution, right? So like we don't look at it strictly from that standpoint, but like right now we base it on first touch attribution, right? So whatever the first touch attribution was, that's what we where we allocate that revenue that we generate. So we as a business, we have
Mhm.
7 softwares that we built over the last 2 years. It typically is like a crazy thing to say because typically companies just have one software that they sell, right? So and even that is difficult. But we decided to sell a bunch of softwares in the first year or so in the second year. So this concept is called as a software compound model, where essentially you're building multiple pieces of software, you sell that to the same user, but also to the same buyer. And you can think of companies like Apple and etc. Like other companies essentially where they have multiple products, and it's modular built. So instead of having all these products under one umbrella, one app, we have literally 6 websites, so 6 web properties, 6 apps that we manage, and they talk to each other. That also means 6 LinkedIn pages.
What led you guys into the deciding to go that direction? That seems like maybe a potential distraction.
Good question. Yeah. So when we see back then, definitely a lot of investors said, maybe you shouldn't do that. But don't always listen to your investors is one thing that I always gonna say. But the when you look at the market, right? So the market is pretty much a red ocean. That means there's over 100 competitors that we compete, whether that's on the data front, the execution front, email infrastructure, etc. And so we looked at all these competitors, and they all have this one app, and they're typically building what I'm going to describe like either a point solution or like a super app, like Apollo or other companies, and where they stuff a lot more features essentially into that over time. And so if anybody has used something like Salesforce, you know that within Salesforce, you're barely using like 10 maybe percent of the features within Salesforce as a rep. And we knew that if we're going to build everything into one software, in the span of sort of next sort of 5 to 10 years, we're going to cram so many features into the software that we're going to become like Salesforce. And I never wanted to become like Salesforce, where you're barely using anything, because it's like, you could, there's just so much in it. So we thought our way, we thought, to ourselves, what's the alternative path to that, to the crowded space? So while everybody's building this one super app and building more features, we thought, let's go down the modular route, right? So, and having essentially multiple softwares, multiple entry points into the ecosystem. And there's essentially advantages using that approach, but there's also disadvantages. But I think in our case, it helps us to just be different. And when you're different and you have a unique way of, or different way of essentially doing things, people want to look at your software. So essentially, you get on top of the radar for a lot of companies, because you just simply do things differently. And a lot of companies like the idea of a modular build and paying only what they need, and then essentially not paying for a lot of the stuff. So let's say if you don't need the data side of the business, you don't have to pay for that, right? So because it's not baked into one sort of app. So yeah, so we have 6 LinkedIn pages. So instead of, again, one LinkedIn page, because we have 6 different brands, instead of 6 different forges, essentially, we also have 6 different LinkedIn pages. And this is something that we can also leverage in multiple different ways. We also have 4 million pages, which is also part of the title. So we're going to go a lot into that. There's less than 1% of companies in the world that have 4 million pages, or even a million. We also have 20 free tools, so there's a lot. And I can just maybe quickly, gonna go through, because this is just to give you an idea about how much stuff we just generally do. So we print out like 200 articles. We have 200 on-site calls that we're gonna go through. We have a YouTube channel where we do about 30 videos on a monthly basis. We have like 700 plus right now in total. We have about 3 CSMs that do 20 to 40 inbound demos on a weekly basis. One outbound account exec doing 20 to 50 demos on a weekly basis. 2 SDRs delivering about 60 to 100 demos on I should say on a weekly basis. Sorry, on monthly basis. Sorry, yeah. And
Mhm.
then we've got a RevOps manager, 300 N8N workflows, AI agents, calling solutions. Me, the CEO, essentially, that does 10 to 20% of the demos. So I'm still a last resort to a lot of the things where the humans or AI agents have failed. I do a ton of social selling as a former VP sales. I'm selling my software to other VP sales out there. And then we have a head of growth, head of YouTube, 3 people in content, 1 agency for both of content, which they're really good, actually. And then on outbound, just to give you an idea about our velocity, we will do about 10K plus emails we send out. We have about 30 LinkedIn profiles in play, because we have a company of 45 employees. And we do about, actually, I should say 3K connection requests on a weekly basis. We connect to a lot of people on a weekly basis. And then we do about 2K cold calls on a weekly basis. So this is the beast that we're running.
Yeah.
But a lot of that would not be possible, the output, if we didn't have the content, right? So,
Mhm.
so yeah.
Yeah, and this
So
took you guys,
let's get
like,
into
2
that.
years to this took you about 2 years to set up fully?
I mean, for all of this, yes, this is our current setup, right? Back in the early days, naturally the setup was like tiny, but we scaled to a first $1 million so we scaled to $3 million in less than 12 months. But the first $1 million in ARR, we had no employees literally in the business. So we're just using, we're essentially doing things that don't scale. And then after kind of $1 million in ARR, we start to hire people in support and engineering. And at $2 million in ARR, we then start to hire people in go to market. Actually, the content person, to be honest, was the first person, she's our current head of content, the first go to market person that we had. Because we always knew that, content compounds, and the sooner you do it, the better, kind of, right? So it definitely is like super important that you want to always invest early, whether that's specifically SEO and definitely YouTube. So YouTube also
Mhm.
compounds quite nicely. So highly recommend. And then naturally there was other things that we added on top of that. So,
Awesome.
cool. So the way we think about, let's call it funnels, or just generally how this business works. So this is a slide that I stole from one of our agency partners. And I always reference the same slide, and that's totally fine with that. But essentially, I think about all things, that there is AI outbound that we do, right? So, and we reach out to a lot of people with intent or without intent, etc. There's some other ways of we do targeting in outbound, but then the majority of the things and how people think about the smartest people out there and the smartest companies, or like our B2B and other companies, is you do essentially inbound led outbound, right? And I think a lot of people know in the audience what it means, but you want to definitely warm up the audience right before you reach out to them. You want to build authority, you want to build the brand. People should have seen you across LinkedIn, Reddit, YouTube, you name it, even events and stuff like that. You're warming up the audience so that when you're going to reach out, it's not like you're going to be a nobody. People will have heard about you. You're building awareness, etc. And then the way you execute that outreach, whether using Clay or whether using the Forge or other bunch of different tools, there's so many of them out there these days, it becomes much easier, right? Because I can give you an idea. So if you're a nobody in this space, your probably reply rates, let's say on a cold email, will be less than 1%.
Mhm.
But if you're a somebody, it is typically I would say 2 to 4%. So I've done some tests with some of the folks in space. Essentially, your conversions jump on the outbound because of the stuff that you do on the inbound side of things. And I typically just make it super kind of simple. Like, it's two things that matter, like a basic stuff. One is to have a good site, like you have a solid website, and a lot of people struggle even with that, and you have to have some good decent content kind of on that. And then the second piece is you have to have a decent social presence. That means being essentially somebody on LinkedIn if your ideal customer is on LinkedIn, right? And that's as simple as that. So yeah, so let's start with I guess kind of top line, right? So because we do a ton of content, and I already mentioned that we have like 4 million plus pages. People are like, Frank, what's that driving to you? How many impressions, how many clicks? So here's our Looker dashboard where we can see our traffic, in October, how many impressions we do, how many clicks we do. It's a fair
Mhm.
bit. It's not, these are not what I call rookie numbers. There's a lot of volume, right? So on one hand, if you're serious about scale and compound, essentially, you need to figure out how to drive traffic to your site. So this is what we're going to go into, but these are the top line numbers. These are some of the numbers in terms of our traffic based on Ahrefs. So you can see top left, but also the number also referring domains. Naturally, if you know a lot about SEO, one of the things that really matters in SEO is getting a lot of backlinks. If
Mhm.
you know a thing called generative engine optimization, you need to have a lot of mentions and many other things happening, right? And it has to go up and to the right as sharp as possible. And I think you do a lot of that will as well, right? On your site.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our entire motion is content led, and you need both social and web content to drive that. And then we also throw in, newsletters to help with our nurturing sequence. But as an agency, we're targeting much fewer clients at a time than you guys are.
Yeah, there's also difference in time, right? So you
Yeah,
need few customers that pay a lot of money. I need many thousands of customers, tens of thousands of customers that pay me a little amount of money. And so I'm targeting millions of businesses, predominantly
yeah,
in the US and Europe, which is very typical for the software. And so to get to the volume, to the absolute number, so the output I'm looking to get to, I need to drive a ton of web traffic. This is one of the ways, one of the things you could
yeah.
do, right? So,
What do you have any
and
insight in what tends to be the best cost to value for all these things that you're doing?
best cost to value. It's very
Yeah.
difficult to answer because, see, the way we look at the user's, the buyer journey essentially is that we will need we'll need to touch the user in multiple different platforms.
Mhm.
On Reddit, on LinkedIn, like I mentioned, right? So it's very hard to say what are the best sort of paths to purchase and how much does that cost us. I think I use a lot of sort of common sense when it comes to what needs to be done. But like content is definitely like if you can scale content, you should always scale content because everybody knows that there are certain types of traffic that is very CAC efficient, which means cost of customer acquisition. And content is one of them. Social is another one, but also cold emails is another one, right? And then there's what is expensive is like spending money on Google Ads, right? So spending, this other, expensive stuff. So it's like a no-brainer stuff that you should be doing.
Yeah.
And you want to, as I said, you want to do it as early as possible because it has a compound. effect, right? So yeah. Now, one of the things, I covered the top line, and I think I'm gonna cover some of the stuff. I'm gonna dive deeper into what actually happens behind the scenes every single month. 200 articles is one of the things that we do across the six properties that we have. So a lot of people think it's all AI based. Not all, half of that is AI based. So on one
Mhm.
hand, what we do is we literally produce 100 TOFU articles, so top of the funnel articles by a system or whatever, a software called SEObot.ai, I believe it is. So the AI are AI written, but the other benefit that really it comes in handy is the backlinks actually that it auto produces for you. That's actually one of the features that I really like a lot, because essentially every single week I get backlinks essentially from the network of the sites they're working with. So that's half, and then the other half is done by humans. So because we have so many different competitors, we're trying to figure out what are the types of piece of content that we could build that have intent, right? And we know that people are searching for, like, they're trying to compare, they're trying to search for alternatives, right? Reviews, etc. And on the comparison front, we have literally one human whose full-time job is to write 30 competitor comparison articles every single month. It's a two-way comparison or a three-way comparison. So a three-way comparison would be something like Zoom Info versus Apollo, and then say versus Salesforge, which is our data product, right? So, but the main emphasis and what the keywords that we're optimizing is Zoom Info versus Apollo. And so this strategy is not being used by a lot of companies, but I highly recommend, if there's a lot of search volume specifically for in a very, very red ocean sort of category, and then two big players are being compared, and you want to kind of try and go after that sort of juicy traffic.
Why those
Then
human written versus
yeah.
AI?
So AI is good at stuff that is like where, like, maybe you don't have to like investigate sort of features, etc. I don't know. So we test naturally stuff, right? So when we go to SEO bot, right, we try to see, is it actually good when it comes to comparison articles? Does it actually do a good job or not? Like, if I would read that, like, is it good quality content or not? And I think AI is not there. Or at least with SEO bot, we haven't seen that yet. Of course, you can use other systems, right? You can orchestrate that, say, in AirOps, right? So AirOps is a fantastic tool to orchestrate this, but it's quite pricey to use, so we don't use that yet. But it will be an alternative for us versus using humans, essentially, right? So I guess it boils down to cost, right? So if I'm have to produce 30 competitive comparisons, how much am I going to pay a human to do that versus a system that does that, right? So yeah, that's how we think about it. Then, so we also do about 60 articles, both with, so bottom of the funnel articles, also written by an agency. So these are alternatives, these are reviews, etc. And literally every single month they produce 60 articles. It's all human written by an agency. So there's also quite a bit of volume. And then one thing that me and you will discussed is transforming a lot of the good videos that you do also on a monthly basis. So we do a lot of videos as well, is transforming those into blog, right? So just like what we're doing right now, right? We can transform that into a blog post. And so you could do that with some of the external things and some of the also internal things. So what I mean by that, the internal stuff is like, um, we're part of this video, but and so we can kind of transform that into a blog post, right? But there's also other videos that we look at, and we don't necessarily we don't own these sort of webinars or whatever. We don't own that content, and we sometimes transform that as well as a test. We do ask for permission, etc., to transform that article. And so you could do that as well. I could test that out. And there's a lot of great videos out there on YouTube that could talk about, for example, cold email or email deliverability, etc., right? But it's not your video, but you can still go and use that and transform that into a blog post.
Yeah.
And then we do like 10 sort of miscellaneous sort of posts as well about different stuff. So for example, today we just launched Forge Wrapped sort of, article, just wrapping up the year and stuff like that. So yeah, so we're gonna keep this sort of velocity. We're not looking to maybe increase that or decrease that. I think it's about right amount of input that we want to do, because naturally against all of these articles, you also need to get backlinks. You need to optimize them later, etc. Right? So At this stage, that feels like we have, for now, that's good for us. But if we're gonna build more products, naturally, then the volume will increase actually. So that's the only time when we're gonna do a lot more input. Say, all right. So let's transition to, so from the articles or blog articles that we do, let's transition to programmatic SEO.
Mhm.
I'm a big believer in programmatic SEO. Essentially, any form of structured data, content, etc. If there is a way to structure it and put that into something like a directory, etc. Yeah, if you can structure that content, why wouldn't you build things like directories or etc. So in some spaces, in some software categories, it's not a thing, but in our software category, it's definitely a thing. So you can build directories like for sales tools, right? There's so many, there are hundreds of them, right? So we can build a directory for that. We can build a directory for Chrome extensions and sales and stuff like that. A directory
Mhm.
for GTM agencies. A directory just on our own site for all of our integration partners. That's also for us like a little directory. A directory for cold email templates, make templates, clay templates, whatever other templates, right?
Mhm.
So there's like a lot of pages out there just on all this stuff. So naturally, we're typically every month looking for more ideas. We're gonna launch even a new directory even in January, so next month. So we're always looking for structured data that has search volume, and for us
Mhm.
naturally to own the market share, to own the search volume. Yeah. And then the millions. So a lot of people like wondering where do the millions of pages come from, because the first part is definitely not a million. That's actually displaying our data that we have in our database behind the scenes on companies and contacts. So I'm going to show you that in a bit. And then the other way we look at programmatic SEO actually is YouTube. We also look at that programmatically a bit, right? Because we produce like 30 videos on a monthly basis. So it has to have some sort of programmatic sort of strategy to it. So let's have a look. So here are we, displaying essentially millions of pages. This strategy is used by companies like Apollo and other companies essentially in the space where they have access to naturally millions and millions of records on individuals and on companies, right? So it's not something that it's not something that's unique, right, to us, but it's something that you can replicate because you have access to a very similar data set. So naturally, you go and display that data out on the web, and it's something that people will search for. So let's
Yeah.
say I would search for, first name, last name of a particular CEO, and then I will be like, top 5 results essentially on Google, and same for Salesforge, right? If you want to search for the headquarters or etc. And other companies also do kind of similar stuff, like Clay, for example. So yeah.
And
Are you
I think
building
the
any
important
directories?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the important thing to note there, and I think as we get more into this programmatic AI world and more people are adopting these strategies, really looking and understanding what you have access to that others don't, and figuring out how to use that for content. So I think this is a perfect example of like you have this data of all these individuals and companies, and so you're using that to create these programmatic pages. And it really helps differentiate against everyone who has access to ChatGPT now.
Exactly. So one of the things that you do, like whenever you're building this content, right, you have to figure out how you're actually downfunneling the users. So on one hand, right, so we want them to sign up, right? So if they really want to get the email address and the mobile number of that individual, they would log into Leadsforge and they would get that data, right? So,
Mhm.
and then the other things that we do on these pages, you can see on the left hand side, we also promoting the Chrome extension. So we have our own Chrome extension as well, and so naturally we also want to generate users on that Chrome extension. Because there's a quite a good correlation that where if you're using our Chrome extension, you are likely to become a customer, right? So, and we want to promote that Chrome extension as much as we can in the right places, and I think this is a good place. So you also need to figure out what do you have there on the right hand side. Is it like a banner? Like, are you trying to push them into another piece of content, or do you want them to sign up? And then naturally other things like, are you firing off any overlays as well? It's not something that we're covering, but like we also do overlays as well, actually, also on top of the content, and we're trying to make people sign up for a demo. Literally prior to this call, the last demo that we booked came from an overlay, and it's a mouse sleeve overlay. And you're just looking to leave the site. So imagine having all these millions of pages. So I would fire the overlay and say, hey, wait a minute. If this will happen or that will happen, would you want to talk to us about it, XYZ? So we're also firing overlays on the content, and works pretty nice. And actually, when you have a ton of traffic, right? So just think of how you're monetizing the content, because one thing is like, yes, I'm very good at driving traffic to my site, but what do you do with that traffic, right? So yeah. Then the other thing, and it's also not actually part of the content, but you need to build stuff as well. So, and a lot of smart companies do this. Essentially, they're applying engineering resource. So I had an engineer that worked full time on just building the tools. And guess what, guys? Engineers are not cheap. So there's all different tools that you could build for a particular category. All right. So in sales, it could be a sales forecast tool. It could be email signature generator, inbox placement test, spin tags generator, right? All of these tools. And naturally, if you go to, Ahrefs, etc., you can see what people are searching for, right? And you can just build that and be valuable to a lot of users out there. So we have a lot of people that just use our tools and never sign up, and that's also totally okay. But you want to generate this also helps you to generate also like backlinks, in different places, right? Because sometimes you don't do it necessarily for like MQLs, right? So people signing up, but you're also doing for backlinks. You're trying to engineer sort of word of mouth from this, etc. So yeah.
Do you think
Well, do you have
do you
any
think
tools on your site?
we have one tool, we have a transcript to it takes a sales transcript and turns it into a LinkedIn post because we talk a lot about how there's really good LinkedIn content ideas embedded in your sales calls. But this is something that we've actually started to talk about and have actually launched with a few clients that we work with is building these tools, especially with Lovable and Bolt and being able to, vibe
Yes.
code much easier. A lot of, to your point, a lot of marketing teams want to build these, but don't have the engineering resources to do so. And a lot of them you can recreate with some of these vibe coding tools if you know how to prompt them properly. So we're definitely big advocates of the free tools. And I think like calculators and things like that are a no brainer for a lot of teams.
Yeah, the thing that you mentioned, so we're about to actually roll it out in Q1, which is, so because we do 500 demos, right? We have a lot of context that we can feed into LLMs and yes, produce LinkedIn posts. And so I want this to be used by my team a lot more, because I'm trying to figure out what sort of content I can give to my team so they can make easier posts on LinkedIn, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's a struggle for a lot of companies out there, right? Because I definitely have quite a good LinkedIn profile, but the thing is, how can you kind of amplify that, right? How can you make 5 people from your company producing good content, or 10 people, right? That has a huge difference. Right now, yeah, one of the areas that we're not yet strong at is, and something we're looking to change next year, is making sure that instead of Frank just constantly posting about stuff, you have 5 people at least, right? But for that, you want to feed them with juicy sort of content. But where are you going to get that? So yes, you can, definitely pay an agency, etc., to do all of that. But a lot of that input as well can come naturally, simply from customer conversation, like you mentioned, right? So yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of gold mine in there.
And then there's this term called PYT, so programmatic YouTube, essentially. So here's a bunch of examples. So let's say we have a bunch of different competitors. So Instantly Alternative, Instantly versus Salesforge, Hey Reach Demo, whatever, Next Demo, etc. So you're just searching for demos, or you're just searching for comparisons, and then you will see videos essentially from different providers from YouTube, right? So, and these videos naturally they can be used both on your sites, they can be used by the sales team, and they can be used, simply, to drive traffic to the YouTube channel, right? And people discovering your tool as an alternative to a competitor. A fun fact, we have one of the competitors, we drove over 100 demos to them because of our demo. And the reason why that was the case is because there was no information on YouTube. There's essentially no material. How does the software look inside? They never wanted to show the software. And we did this sort of sneaky thing where we asked somebody to go and do a demo and just record it. And then we just took that as an input data and we did a demo essentially of the software and just put it on YouTube. And we got a ton of traffic. So we generated them a ton of demos. We generated them at least 100 demos from that video. But then some of that traffic also went to us, to our tool as
Right.
well. So this isn't something that is sneaky that we did, but like the thing is, like, everybody was trying to find out how does the software look like, because they were not showing it anywhere on LinkedIn, on YouTube, nothing. So we fought to capitalize on that because people were searching for that. They were searching for
Yeah.
the demo of that tool.
And
So
that
yeah,
type of search traffic, are you just pulling that from Ahrefs or are you pulling that from other tools?
I think the tool for YouTube, so like Ahrefs is one. So you overlay with, I think it's called vidIQ, I believe it's called. So there's one tool for YouTube as well, and it analyzes YouTube's internal search engine traffic. So you want to figure out, what's being searched on YouTube, which is different stuff to naturally to Google, and then just see patterns, right? But but really, we're optimizing for Google traffic, not for YouTube traffic. So yeah. And why YouTube? A lot of people are like, Frank, why are you doing all this YouTube stuff? Because we have 3K subscribers. It's not a lot, like, overall. But this is YouTube. YouTube is the number one most converting channel of the Forge. That's why you do
Wow,
YouTube. Even though there's maybe not that as many views, there's not like hundreds of thousands of views, etc. Every view counts a lot because this is not B2C stuff. This is B2B stuff, right? And it converts like crazy. So it has the highest conversion rate. That's why you should invest into YouTube as early as you can.
that's really shocking.
I know. Next, so we talked about, like, one of the things I talked about, let's drive a lot of traffic, that's how we do it. And so I outlined kind of the strategy there. Now, the next part is, okay, we drive a ton of that traffic, and then I dabbled a bit into how you convert that. But let's look at the particular examples. So one of the things that people do not do, or they shy away, if they cannot figure out how it works, etc., is to enable a calling function, a live calling function on your site. There are tools on the right-hand side that you see that are called Captivate, Face-to-Face, or Warmly. These are at least 3 examples that enable a live calling function on the site. So you want to call that traffic, especially the comparison traffic, review traffic, whatever, high intent pages like pricing, etc. And so you can enable different functionalities, whether you want the user to call you, right? So there's a widget bottom right, and you can call that person. Then B is you can call them. So what you can do is you can spy on the users within these tools, and you can call them proactively, which can be done
Hmm.
manually by a rep, or you can do it programmatically, which means the specific trigger, like scroll depth, for example, or something happens, right? So there's a trigger event. So then what you're seeing there at the bottom a bit is you get a ping in Slack, which says somebody is calling you from the UK, as an example. And then naturally the rep picks up and you're speaking to a real human. So we generate today, you can see at the bottom there, there's a data there where we're generating over 200 calls on a monthly basis from the traffic. So apart from expecting the users to sign up, book a demo, maybe convert from the overlay, etc., we also generate 200 plus dollars per month. So then my question to anybody who's watching this, how many calls are you generating from your traffic today? And if the answer is
Yeah.
0, you're missing out. And that's pretty much it. So yeah. Have you dabbled into some of these tools? Well,
No, I haven't. It's something that I've gone back and forth on because I actually like talking on the phone, especially if if I'm filling out a form, I'd rather just get on a call with someone then because I have high intent, I have questions, I just want them answered. But I've seen a lot of people move away from phone calls, but I think this is great indication that it's something that people should definitely be testing, and phone calls definitely isn't something that people want to get rid of.
yeah, it's like people had the office phones back in the days, right? Somebody rings and you would a lot of the times think it's a potential customer. So salespeople definitely want to pick up the phone. It's kind of similar
Yeah.
thing in the Slack channel. Somebody's calling you, a potential customer is calling you. And because my
Yeah.
SDRs, they're being compensated on demos attended, like you're getting easy demos kind of booked in, and attended. They definitely are very hungry. So people literally pick up the phone here within 5 seconds. That's how
Yeah.
fast they click on the answer button. I even have one of my reps, he built a script to do auto answering on top of Slack. Because the reps compete for these calls essentially. There's multiple reps, right? So the
Yeah.
logic is the logic, whoever's gonna pick up first gets the opportunity to talk to the lead. So yeah.
That's great.
All right. Part two. So I think a lot of folks know about this, but essentially de-anonymizing traffic. So because you drive a ton of traffic to all these pages, you can de-anonymize traffic on either the whole site or high intent pages, competitive pages, right? You can also do it for the careers page. If you're looking for a new recruits, that's what we do as well. We're checking who is checking out our careers page right now, and then we're getting a Slack notification. Like this person is checking out your careers page right now. Without them applying, right? So you can do that naturally via tools like Vector, RB2B, Snitcher. There's so many of them. Clay also has a waterfall approach for the best possible coverage. And that typically you're going to get the LinkedIn URL from these tools. And so you can reach out on LinkedIn and you can see what I'm writing. This is literally the fresh sort of thing that I'm writing there. And the other thing that you can do is reach out via email. If you want to test out the email approach, go to the Warmly website. So the one I mentioned. They also have the anonymization engine. So when you're going to enter the website, I literally within like 5 minutes or so, I have received an email from them. So
Hmm.
see if that works for you. So they don't message me on LinkedIn, they message me on email. And the reason why they probably do email is because email just scales better than LinkedIn. That's why, right? So
Yeah.
then the final part is this high value? So you can actually score these leads. And imagine this is like high value, like 10 out of 10. You definitely want to enrich with the mobile number from one of these tools, Salesforge, whatever you want to use. And you maybe want to pass that onto your rep to call immediately, right?
Hmm.
That's what I would do, right? If you really want to go after the top tier lead, like why wouldn't you enrich with the mobile number and call them?
Hmm.
So yeah, I bet you're doing this as well, right? On your traffic.
Yeah, we're definitely de-anonymizing. Everything is going through LinkedIn still for us, out of my personal LinkedIn. We have dabbled a little bit into email, but haven't gone into there yet.
Gotcha. Is it because the volume is still low enough that you can do it from your LinkedIn profile? What's the reason?
No, I just personally, and I probably am hindering myself here. I hate cold inbound emails, so I try not to do it myself, but it definitely does not scale as much as LinkedIn. So there will be a point where we have to move into cold outbound on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's like in our case, right? Because we have so many pages. So if we are unlocking de-anonymization across millions of pages, and then we're gonna, segment that, audience in multiple different ways, we still will need the email infrastructure, to fire it off. But this is an
Yeah.
example of a high value lead, right? That I'm reaching out, and so I would use LinkedIn in that particular case. Sure, you can use multiple LinkedIn profiles, which is something you can use in Salesforce. You can connect unlimited profiles, but
Mm.
Mm, yeah, and you should always call like in my opinion, if this looks like, somebody that could pay you 5, 10, 20, whatever, 30K, in ACV. So yeah. Lead magnets. So that's the next section. We're gonna look at some of the lead magnets. We have a ton of them that we do, right? Because like I mentioned, so one of the things how you can convert on the site is you can start a trial, you can book a demo, convert via overlay. You can go and speak to a real human, but you can also, one of the most important things that you should do in marketing when a person lands on your site is figuring out ways how to capture their email, right? So because you can
Mhm.
do a lot of different things with that. So let's go over it. So one of the things that you can do on our site, if you go to agentfrank.ai, it will redirect to the particular section on the site, is get a unique email written by an AI SDR. And a lot of people are just curious what sort of email is going to be, how does it look like, etc. What is going to do, and essentially it's like giving a character to use and saying, hey, do you want to get this end product and see how it looks like, and they're essentially very very willingly giving you their email address and the LinkedIn URL. And guess what? It goes into my Slack. I get the email address, I get the LinkedIn URL, and then they get that unique email delivered by Agent Frank, and then the person typically 9 out of 10 times is very impressed with the email, and they either respond to you back via email. I can ping them on LinkedIn and say, "Hey, how was the email?" And and then after actually the success event, so when it says "Show me the magic," you can immediately call the rep as well. So there's essentially 3 ways for me to down funnel you after this lead magnet. So
Hmm.
next one is building a strategy plan. So because we have multiple products and every customer needs their own strategy, instead of you maybe jumping on a demo, you can get a uniquely computed landing page on Webflow that we're using right now, just simply by entering your email address. So you can also do that, go into the homepage, and the bottom you'll see assemble your strategy plan, whatever. And within 5 minutes or so, we're gonna prepare a custom plan for you. So this mimics, if somebody's aware of digital sales rooms, where essentially, doing a bit of analysis on your company, right? We do web crawling, and then we also analyze maybe your competitors and stuff like that. And we just give you a plan of which products to use, etc. There's some insights into pricing and stuff like that. And that's something that you can share internally in Slack. You can share it anywhere, right? Because it's a custom link. And the beautiful thing about that plan is that we're generating backlinks on that plan as well, right? So it's great for kind of getting a bunch of backlinks as well.
Mm.
Oh, so yeah, highly recommend this one for anything that's complex to understand, maybe, and you want to just generate it. And you have a lot of traffic, right, coming. And this thing is also powerful to put it in a lot of the blog posts, right? If you're writing, let's say, about cold email strategy, LinkedIn strategy, whatever, right? And then you can just have it as an inline unit, and that's another way for you to generate a ton of leads from the traffic.
How many of these do you create, like a quarter or a month? Like, how frequently are you creating these net new lead magnets? Because I assume a lot of time goes into.
I would say, yeah, a lot of time goes to them. I would say about 1 to 3 every month.
Wow.
So we have monthly targets in the team for inputs. And one of the inputs is, for example, to build a lead magnet. So everybody has targets in our company. The content team slash the website team, the engineers, everybody has targets that you have to achieve by the end of the month. And so we got to commit to a lead magnet, for example. But we're big on what we call email capture. We're trying to figure out ways of how can we make the users give up their email address easily, so that we identify who they are and kind of process them in the best possible way, essentially. Like this example, for example, you're on our pricing page within, say, Mailforge.ai, one of our forges, and you look at the pricing, you do some calculation, and you want that to receive that as a sort of, as a, let's call it a quote, or like you want to get that pricing in your inbox so you can forward it to your manager or the budget holder, whatever. So then you can just enter your business email address and I'm gonna deliver that to you. Email me the price. Very
Yeah.
simple. Another one is you're looking at a case study, right? And we're gonna give you like the first page of the case study. But do you want to receive the full case study? Sure. Enter your email address and you'll get the full case study delivered to you. Guess what? These are high intent leads, right? I get that into my Slack. Somebody wants a case study, somebody wants to get a quote, whatever, somebody wants to build a strategy plan. All high intent leads I'm generating
Yeah.
every single month. And then the lead magnets. So these lead magnets typically would use in a lot of different places, even on LinkedIn. So let's say top 10 N8N workflows used by the Forge. A lot of people love this stuff. We do 300 plus N8N workflows. So we're sharing top 10 from our stack. And people just want to see what we do. But they're very much, so you can go to resources.salesforge.ai and have a look at all the lead magnets that we built. And then we keep repurposing them. Right? That's the beautiful thing about this sort of strategy. This one is a cool one. I like this a lot. The Google sign-in, right? So if you go on different like on the site, and it could be any site like Expedia, Skyscanner, it could be a software site like ours. And top right, you'll see sign into Mailforge with Google, right? So you're gonna click sign into Mailforge with Google with, let's say, with f@salesforge.ai. Feel free to send me a cold email, by the way. And so what can you do with that? So first of all, if there's no sign up within X time frame, right? So there's, let's say, SLA. So in our case, I think it's like 2 hours. So if within 2 hours you didn't sign up to the Forge, I'll fire off an email. You can
Mm.
also enrich that with a LinkedIn URL or enrich that with a mobile number, right? Again, and call. So you can identify this, right? You can process that in N8N, etc. Hey, is this a high value lead? Yes. Enrich with mobile, call, right?
Yeah.
Is as good as, is the closest thing to me when it comes to to de-anonymization. I think that's the closest thing to that. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. How successful is that?
It's pretty good, I would say. I think conversion rate of that is about 1% on the site, which is high, right? So I get your email address, and if you didn't sign up to my thing, right? So if you didn't start a trial, you didn't book a demo, etc., I will fire off. I will execute, against that particular lead, right? And I'll come, I'll knock on your door essentially.
Mhm.
Maybe the person, they left, whatever, something happened, maybe, right? But they were on your site, right? So, and I'm just trying to capture, the email address and do something with it. But I'm not trying to be a pest. I'm not trying to pester people. I'm trying to be helpful, right? And that's different. And then there's a bit of, finesse that goes into that. What sort of copy is it that you would execute? Yeah. All right. So we've covered two sections. One is on driving traffic. Two is on converting that traffic, which I thought, some of the good, stuff. And now we're going to transition over to LinkedIn, because guess what? You can drive a ton of traffic from LinkedIn. So first and foremost, let's go again, top level, let's overview. So there's a guy named Frank. Frank's been around since 2010. So when you do look at my profile at any moment, it's quite an old profile, 15 years old profile. So I've been around the block for a while. This
Yeah.
guy, Frank, he produces 23 posts in a single year. So this is a LinkedIn review, by the way, so it's a year in the review. 3.8K comments, 8K reactions, 53 reposts, and 7K people did hit follow. So this is the stat of who I am and what this is also why most of the content is being published from my profile rather than the profiles of my employees, because I will have the best reach um, probability, right? Or for me to go viral, or for me to share that piece of content with my ICPs, right, in LinkedIn.
Are you leaving those comments yourself?
Which comments?
They are outbound
You mean
comments.
these
It says
ones? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. These are all my comments. Yeah, yeah. So I checked my usage on my phone last night, and
Yeah.
LinkedIn is number one. And so
How do you
yes, it
decide
is
on
me. Just
how do you decide who to comment on? Is it, like, strictly ICP, or are you just kind of letting comments go all over?
a ICP is preference one, but I also would always comment on like people that I sort of admire or follow, like Jason Lemkin, for example. Then 20VC, for example. There are definitely people that are big in let's call it in the B2B SaaS space. So apart from the like cold email, maybe LinkedIn outreach kind of space, I also comment on a lot of people that are in B2B SaaS space. And something like you definitely want to comment on people's posts that you feel like this is trending, or this is going to go viral, etc. Because one of the key strategies we're going to talk about a bit, commenting sometimes makes a ton more sense than actually posting on LinkedIn, because your comments can get a ton more reach than your post because of algorithms, wherever, right? So you want
Yeah.
to latch on that post that is either going viral or will go viral. The dilemma with that is you need to be one of the first people to comment on that post. So you want to click on the bell icon and follow these people. So whenever they post and it looks like, damn, this is going to go viral, I want to be one of the first people that's going to post on that. You want to be posting within 10 minutes, even faster, like as soon as you can, essentially, when you see, damn, this is a great post. So if you're going to be one of the first people that are going to post on that, you're going to get a ton of reach, a ton.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right, let's have a look at what was trending on Frank's profile over the last year or so. So first and foremost, so people like on LinkedIn drama, they like success. You have to think about what people like, because people go on the feed sometimes just to get entertained, essentially, right? So they want to be educated and they want to be also entertained. But
Mhm.
from an educational standpoint, people like to comment and follow, etc., when they see something successful. Me talking about us generating consistently 500 demos on a monthly basis, people don't even generate 10 demos in a month. And then there's this guy named Frank that generates 500. So they want to figure out how do I, minimize that delta between 10 and 500, right? So they're very curious, and we share definitely a lot of content. We try to educate folks on how to do a better job, because pretty
Mhm.
much 90% of companies suck, essentially,
Mhm.
in what they do. Uh, so you're trying to be helpful, right, as much as you can. And then I have a post called the apology post. Actually, a lot of competitors have copied us, which we don't mind, right? We don't mind competitors copying us. Essentially, it's apologizing to folks out there for doing a good job and being a good software. Essentially, people have nothing to do essentially because the software just works. Suddenly they have a lot of repetitive work to do. Then NA10 workflows, we already covered that in as a lead magnet, right? So NA10 workflows did really well. It was a top 3 post of the year. So essentially, what you're seeing in there, where I have these arrows, these are the lead magnets. So lead magnets still do work. It's a bit of a double-edged sword with lead magnets. So because if you're gonna do a really crappy lead magnet, people will really hate you for that. So definitely, there's a lot of work that goes into lead magnets. So we typically take about a week to at least a week, 1 to 2 weeks to prep for the lead magnet, and then we go live. And it has to be good, right? Because if people gonna open that lead magnet and it's not gonna be good, they're not gonna be happy about you, right? You're gonna ruin
Yeah.
your brand, right? So it definitely is a double-edged sword. Then the top post that people actually, so there's a thing called reach, and then there's a brand recall. How you build a better brand. So you don't really build a better brand by having lead magnets, honestly. But again, it generates you a ton of reach, you generate MQLs, you can download from them, etc. But if you want to figure out what was our number one post from a brand recall standpoint, where people will remember me for years and even a decade, is the April's Fool's joke where I told to the whole audience that I got fired. I highly recommend to look at that post and get some inspiration of how to be a scroll stopper on LinkedIn. Then the other thing I want to highlight is we did exactly the same post. So post number 5, where we did exactly the same post, nearly like exactly the same as the number 1 post, where we just simply repurposed the same lead magnets.
Hmm.
One of the things that muscles to train is how to repurpose the same stuff, and go
Yeah.
viral again.
Yeah.
It's not going to get the same reach, right? Because a lot of people have seen most likely that lead magnet, but it's still going to do really well.
Yeah.
Lead magnets on reply rates. So one of the things we talked about, how to generate up to 50% reply rates on LinkedIn. That also went really well. And then we're going to go
Uh-huh.
into a section called the movie skits. So this is also part of the, one of the, my belief is one of the posts that do really well on LinkedIn. If you learn how to entertain, but also educate at the same time, the audience, these posts do really well. And one of the things you can do is movie skits, which is something that we did and we did really well. But yeah, is there something, Will, that I'm missing? I'm not doing. You're like, Frank, you're not doing this thing, and you could do really well at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for LinkedIn, I also preach comments. I think I think a lot of people miss the opportunity of jumping onto someone who's bigger than you or another creator that goes viral often, leaving a comment. Sometimes my comments will get 10, 50,000 impressions if it's just, thoughtful, or sometimes even not. Sometimes I'm just being, kind of a smart ass and with a witty reply. And being able to kind of leverage the comments in that way is super important. And then we also find lead magnets
Mhm.
be super valuable as well. 1 to 3 a month is super aggressive. We found, you can still be successful with just like 1 a quarter, and refer back to it. And once you build up a library, especially if they have longevity to them, you can kind of cycle through. But yeah, giving value is the most important thing on LinkedIn. And if you do that through a lead magnet or an insightful comment or just an insightful post, that's really how you perform well.
Yeah, one of the sneaky things I like to do, and a lot of people do that, is imagine your competitor does a lead magnet. So you don't have to do any content. The competitor does the lead magnet, and you can just go after those folks essentially. So I'll give you an example. Let's say there was a competitor that talked about. It's not even a competitor, to be honest, an agency that talked about building an AI sales agent on NA10, and they want to share the workflow. And I have an off-the-shelf AI agent solution. It's not built in NA10. And so essentially, that's a fantastic. So all these people are commenting, and so because they're interested in the AI sales agent and that being built in NA10. So I'm gonna go on and scrape all these individuals that commented, and I will reach out to them about the same topic, as in, hey, I saw that you maybe are interested in, let's say, in the AI sales agent solution. I've built something really cool and it works really well. Blah blah blah. I was wondering whether that may be of interest to you. And a lot of people will respond to that, right? Because they have a problem, which is sales, and they want to solve that through an AI sales agent. And here's an alternative to that, right? So that's
Yeah.
an
And
example
I bet
that
they're
works really well. You can do that with competitors, etc. So
yeah, I bet they're way, more happy to do it with an off-the-shelf solution than having to figure out and building their own end with some, template that kinda works. Getting it off the shelf is always the better way.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's why I'm always scouting for these posts, and I'm going to show you how I'm doing that. All right, edutainment. Right. So we talked about movie skits, and also you can do also AI videos through Sora, etc. But here are some of the examples of what we did. And so with movie skits or anything that's sort of edutainment sort of related, we're not looking for maximum reach. We're looking for strong brand recall, scroll stopper essentially, people that will remember you. And I think that the main one that people remember the most is the one on the right, where I did a Margaret Robbie essentially bathtub scene. So you can watch that in my featured section on LinkedIn. But guess what? This was definitely the one that that was a scroll stopper, and a lot of people remembered this one really well. Then the second one is a scene from Star Wars. Third one is The Wolf of Wall Street, and then the fourth one is a video. It's a rap song made, using Sora. And I have one actually coming out tomorrow, so watch that one. So every month we essentially have let's call it an internal goal, aspiration to go viral once a month. And that could be a lead magnet, that could be a skit, that could be something, right? So we definitely have these items that we prepare for on a monthly basis, and we do put work into this, and we do try and figure out the angles and how could we relate this to our space, etc. Right? So, and it does work, and people do like it. But apart from me posting about it, you can make other people post about it as well because they like that stuff, right? So,
Mhm.
so you can have partners posting about it. You can have your employees posting about it, etc., because they like these videos as well. Um, all right. Then the next thing I want to talk about, and this is exactly what we're doing right now, is you can do a webinar, right? And and webinars do work if they are very well done. So the topic is like on point and something that people really want to learn about. So on the left hand side, you can see me and a guy named Bill from Sales Captain, which is an agency in the UK, doing a masterclass on top 30 clay workflows that we walked through in an hour session that would drive the most, that would drive a ton of revenue in 2026. A lot of, clay is trending right now, fantastic, but a lot of people don't know really which of the workflows actually moves the needle, right?
Mhm.
A lot of founders out there, a lot of heads of growth, they're like, clay is like massive, and you're not really sure where to start when it comes to the data orchestration, how to execute against that. Then the one that I did, recently is how to write cold emails that don't suck. So a lot of people really struggle to figure out what is the copy, that you should send. What are the frameworks? How should it look like on email? How should it look like on LinkedIn, etc. And again, you
Yep.
can see that over 500 people sign up as well. So they do work. And then what I typically like to do, because I typically do them on a monthly basis, is I would invite the people that essentially have attended, let's say, the webinar from last month. I would invite them to attend the webinar this month, right? So I'm trying to sort of, if you enjoy the masterclass with me and Bill, then I believe you may want to join the next one, right? So you also need to create this sort of workflow as well. And it can be done through a LinkedIn automation tool, can be done through you extracting the attendees and then sending them an email. There's multiple ways to go about this. But
Yeah.
typically, if people really liked the first one, they wanna go and and attend the second one. And the other thing that kind of really works is like within the automation is inviting people to check it out, let's say the recording on YouTube, and then asking them to subscribe to your channel. All right. So this is one little hack I shared with you as well, Will. But essentially, this is one of the things why it works is because on LinkedIn you have the ability to to invite up to 1,000 individuals to the event every week. So imagine if our event is in 4 weeks' time and it's on LinkedIn, and I have 10 employees. That means in week one I can invite 10,000 people across the network, right? In week two, I can repeat the same. I can invite again 10,000 people. And sure, a lot of people will say no to the invitation, but you will get to hundreds of people that are interested in your topic and they will attend. Right. And this is how you build awareness, right? You're building buzz. And if you're doing that consistently, right, people will know who you are. They know that you talk
Hmm.
about, the stuff they're really interested, like, the state of cold email, in 2025, with a guy named Matt from Hunter, Uh, and you just keep on talking about cold email and educating the audience, building that authority in the space. And you're also cross-pollinating naturally your audience with their audience and vice versa, which is also important, right? Because Matt has access to my ICP, I have access to his ICP, and we want to work together, right? And build something valuable for both our audiences, right? ICP cross-pollination is a huge thing just generally in the space. You want to
Hmm.
find other companies, tech vendors, essentially to have access to your ICP, and you want to definitely do it with a company that has a, similar size audience than you, right? So because sometimes, somebody has, tiny audience, like 100 people, and then another company has 10,000 people, right? As an example. There's a bit of an issue there, right? So in terms of kind of audience size. You definitely want to work with other companies that have a similar or bigger audience to offer, and then do a collab, a webinar, whatever. It could be an article, something else, right? Together to drive the awareness across the two platforms. Now, the thing that I always say is, when you're streaming, let's say on LinkedIn, you should always also stream on YouTube as well. And then there's a little sort of library, right, of a lot of valuable content. So that's great. And then one of the things you do is you produce a blog post out of that, right? So, and this was fantastic. So this is one of the things I mentioned. We do 20 of these a month. These could be our own videos, right? Because we produce 30 videos a month. We do some webinars. So we can use any of those videos, transform them into a blog article. But we can also, as I said, use also external videos that are really, really good and transform them into a blog post. Now, the next topic I want to go into is tracking signals of posts and doing what's called GIT, just-in-time outreach. So for that, you need signals. So here's a tool called Jungler. Jungler is a tool, one of the tools that we use. We use so many tools where you can track signals. And a signal could be you are tracking a competitor, you're tracking the problem that we're solving. So, for example, email deliverability. You're tracking a concept called AISDR, right? And
Hmm.
you're essentially trying to figure out positive sentiment, negative sentiment, languages, regions, whatever. There's a lot of different filtering that you can do. You can also track for lead magnets, etc., right? And then extract the followers, etc., and then reach out in real time. So guess how it works. So we have specific either competitors, specific keywords, pain points, etc. We push that into Salesforge, so our execution engine. Then we have an infrastructure of 500 mailboxes and an infrastructure of 30 LinkedIn profiles that are ready to rock and roll and engage with these individuals on LinkedIn. So these are typically either integration partners, competitors, subject matter experts in the field, right? So engaging in a timely manner is super important. The only thing that I'm going to say, don't do what a lot of people do, like, hey, I saw that you commented on this post, blah, blah, blah. That's really bad. So just don't do that. So you
What
definitely, there
should
has
you
to be
do
some sort of
instead?
processing in the middle. You definitely want to qualify. What's that?
What should you do instead?
So instead, so whenever you're doing a push, I recommend actually to do a push, let's say, into something like NA10 or Clay, and then qualify these individuals essentially, whether it's an ICP even, whether it's definitely from the right country, and what is the maybe the best angle to approach that individual, right? So you can extract the data from their LinkedIn profile, from the website, etc., match it with what is it that you're selling, and do a computation, and then craft like a really great message because timing is everything, So you need to figure out these signals on the web, on Reddit or on LinkedIn. And if you're gonna do GIT just in time, you're gonna see conversions going through the roof. So yeah, there's
Hmm.
multiple ways
Hmm.
to achieve the same, but because we have so many We have thousands of potential customers out there on LinkedIn. We need to have the scale and infrastructure. So we need to have many signals. We need to have many mailboxes, many LinkedIn profiles going out. That's also one of the reasons why we're driving over 500 demos on a monthly basis. All right. The other thing that you can do on LinkedIn, and it works also really well, is naturally educating your audience by building a course. That course could be something that sits within your software, like Salesforge Academy. We have a course literally within our software. So a lot of people are going to sign up simply because they want to have access to a lot of knowledge about cold email and LinkedIn. But then you can do something else on a third-party platform like Udemy. So you can build a course. And again, this takes us 2 to 4 weeks to build a really good course. And then what you want to do is you want to distribute that course, right? And you can distribute that course on LinkedIn and give out, free code essentially, which is what we're doing here right now. And guess what? Literally within 8 hours, all the 100 people would sign up to the course. So you can quickly
Mhm.
educate the people about LinkedIn, how to do that outreach. And it's just that it's done by us, right? And it works also really well. We do it rarely, but it's just something that I think you're trying to be valuable to your audience, right? So do a little course, or we even have a certificate that we issue to people and they can put it on their LinkedIn profile, right? So, all right. The other thing, which works really well, is doing a ton of podcasts. So over 50 this year.
Wow.
So it's not something that I'm hosting somebody. No, I'm a guest. I was a guest in over 50 podcasts this year. My record was doing 4 of them in a day this year. So then we have a little record there. So there's multiple reasons why you're doing that, right? So you wanna actually penetrate what I'm gonna describe micro audiences, right? And doing that at scale. And naturally, what typically happens, people are gonna put you on Spotify, and then a lot of them are gonna put you on LinkedIn. So they essentially advertising you and your company and the success and how you're doing things, etc. And they really like, you want to be a person or a speaker, right, that has something to say, and that's why a lot of them want to have me on the show, etc., and to talk about it. But then the benefit to us is that they would go on LinkedIn, they would talk about it, and then they are essentially advertising us on LinkedIn, right? So you have to think about how to talk about your company on LinkedIn through the lens of other people. Why would they talk about you, right? So
Mhm.
the other way to kind of have a similar effect is to attend events. I call it programmatically. Programmatically means it's doing a ton of events. So, for example, this quarter alone, I visited over 10 countries. And one of the things that we did is attending a ton of Clay events. So Clay is if somebody doesn't know, is a solution for data orchestration, and they do a lot of offline events in different cities around the world. But specifically in Europe, which is where I'm based right now, there's like an event in every country,
Hmm.
and there were like 10 plus events or something. So instead of instead of doing one event, why not do 10? Why not just fly into location once a week? Or even I did like 3 locations, 3 Clay events in a week. Why wouldn't you do that and essentially access multiple audiences? Because what happens then is, when you're a speaker or just an attendee, etc., you turn up, people are sort of very impressed with what you have to say, what you have built, blah, blah, blah. But what typically happens, people will gonna go on LinkedIn, actually gonna talk about you. So again, how do you make people talk about you and your brand, um, and what you do, etc., on LinkedIn on a weekly basis, right? So that could be through the podcast, through events, etc., right? So that's how we're trying to think about how can we make more people talk about us more organically. Actually, we engineer for that, right? So yeah. Maybe the only thing I want to say about the events is there's a lot of people that tell you not to do events. Like, let's say in YC, YC tells you not to do events at all, not to ever invest into events. And I can agree with a lot of kind of niches, that you're going into. And yes, events maybe will not bring you value and ROI. But what I'm trying to build is, like, when I go to events, I'm building the brand. You want to build the brand, and you want to associate yourself with another big brand and latch on that brand, like Clay, for example, right? So because we're highly compatible, we integrate, we invested even in Clay, etc. Um, and 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 if you are, and the way I look at it, like, if the room that you're in, right, if it has at least
Mhm.
50 people to about people, you should definitely fly in. Because typically, like half of those people maybe going to be your ICPs. Sure, maybe somebody's going to buy a product, but really, like, you want to try and build these from an attribution standpoint, what I call a first touch. So you're building a first touch on LinkedIn, you're building a first touch on events. So you need to build that brand. You need to build these first touches. So I build a lot of first touches, let's say this quarter, and then I'm gonna push for the last touch in Q1.
Hmm.
That's how I warmed up. I warmed up the audience LinkedIn, I warmed them up offline in multiple different places, and off I go. The next one that I highly recommend is how do you then, there's multiple ways of how people can get closer to you and your product, etc. And on one hand, they can go onto your website, right? And you would love them to sign up immediately, but that's not how stuff works, all the time. They may need to join your community. So I also have my own community, which doesn't talk about Salesforge or anything, just talks about building pipeline, right? How to generate a ton of demos, essentially, and generate a lot of revenue, etc. And because you can just talk about it nonstop, LinkedIn is not really the place to talk about it, right? Because posts come and go, but you need a WhatsApp community. I highly recommend to have your own WhatsApp community and just talk about anything that has to do with pipeline building, right?
Yeah.
And you want to advertise that as well, time to time, maybe like once a month. What are you discussing in that community? And you're trying to bring in more ICPs into the community because ICPs want to hang out with each other. And they just need an environment. Somebody needs to host that environment. I'm totally okay to host the environment and be the admin of the WhatsApp group, And after this session, I got to go back to the, WhatsApp community, got to check it out, what's happening there as well. And moderate it, inject some knowledge, etc., so that it's always lively. And yeah, this is something that you want to do because if you have a community that helps you, with the word of mouth and everything, helps you with your brand, but it's something you'd always want to go on LinkedIn and you will generate, as you can see, you'll generate engagement on that. And you just want to take some screenshots of some of the conversations that are happening in the community.
Frank, any
All right.
suggestions
This was
on getting on a podcast? We have a question from the audience here. How are you getting on other people's podcasts?
a good question. So there are tools that do that. So you can literally just Google podcasting outreach tool, and you'll see some solutions out there. That's one way. The second way, if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, I have an agency that I've used to reach out to podcasts, and it's a really good one. So feel free to reach out to me. Happy to recommend and do it a bit more programmatically, right? So and at scale. Because what you'll find is when you're gonna do a lot of outreach and then you're gonna jump on a lot of these, then what will happen is later on, like let's say today, a lot of people come to me now. They want me to go on their show. The other way to go about this is let's say on LinkedIn, you see the host and the host talks about Frank, and you feel like that host has the access to SAP. You should just reach out to them on LinkedIn. And that's exactly what I did with Will. Right, Will? That's exactly how I reached out to you. I saw Will on LinkedIn. I was like, wow, Will is a cool guy. And I think it's exactly kind of the right stuff that I would talk about. I never have talked about content and how content generates pipe. And I think there's something here because essentially there's no other place where I've talked about this, what I'm talking about today. This deck has never been used anywhere. This was built literally in the last 24 hours. Everything that you're seeing in front of you guys. So yeah, cool. So what, I already mentioned this thing, but like what you can do is sometimes you don't have to build your own content. You can just latch on the content of other people that talk about your space, your competitors, etc., and use the engagement of that to then build a list and reach out to people. Right? A lot of these posts are going to have thought leadership ads typically running against them. So whenever you see that, just go and save that post and then do something with it later. Whatever you want to do with it. You want to use that for inspiration for your own post. You want to use that or to extract the commenters. Whatever you want to do that with it, guys. But just whenever you see a good post, my big recommendation, always go and save it. Always
Hmm.
save it so you can come back to it later and use it or whatever you want to use it or, for etc. So yeah. All right. We talked about commenting, right? I have also seen people this year that got like over 100K impressions for a comment. So you should definitely go and comment on it. This is my latest comment that had a good amount of, impressions on there. And that post was about different tools that should be used to do outreach. And in my case, I have not seen Salesforge on that. And I'm a big believer that Salesforge is the number one solution to do multi-channel outreach at scale.
Mhm.
And I just simply you just the individual saying, "Hey, Salesforge with unlimited mailboxes and whatever LinkedIn send us surely deserves a spot on that comparison." So you know, and so you got a bit of comments, right? You got impressions going on, etc. And I knew that post is going to take off, right? So whenever you see that the post is going to take off, you should go and comment it, especially if the person is from your space. You know, even comment on competitor CEO posts. You definitely want to have the balls for it,
Mhm.
essentially commenting on literally competitor posts, because I have the balls for it. And guess what? A lot of other people don't have the balls for it. But I highly, highly encourage you to have the balls, go and comment on your competitors, CEOs posts up there. Just
Yeah.
don't be, don't be, you know, don't do it the wrong way, essentially, just trying to be, I guess, add your own point, to whatever it is that they're writing. Don't try and
Mhm.
stir up some drama in the comment section. And that's all I have for you. If you want to find me on LinkedIn, here's my quick QR code. But you can find me. It's quite easy. Just type in actually bacon into LinkedIn, and I'm literally the first result. So bacon comes from bringing home the bacon. So yeah, if you want to try also a Salesforge for a month, happy 2026. Use that code in Salesforge, and you're gonna get a month off. So yeah.
Thank you, Frank. That was incredible. I have at least 4 different ideas of things that I wanna test now after listening to that, of things that, I think that's kind of the issue, or at least that I face, is there's so many opportunities and there's so many strategies that you can deploy. I wonder if any advice from all the things that you guys are doing and have, I assume, attempted, someone who's just trying to get their content motion up and running to help, where would you say they should prioritize their time?
I mean, if you're just starting off, let's say you're a founder, whether CEO or etc., just post Monday to Friday, once a day, what's happening in your business. What happened yesterday? Who do you speak to? Uh, and try not to talk about your features all day long, right? So I think dropping it like maybe once a month, like every couple of weeks, what you're launching is pretty cool, etc. But don't talk about nonstop about your product, etc. Just share your journey on LinkedIn. That's a good start, and you'll get people wanting to follow your journey, wanting to support you. They're gonna start doing some research on you. What is it that you're cooking up, etc. Like, and as I said, try just to be helpful on LinkedIn. So do educate them about what are the lessons you learned as a founder, and then if you want to do it really well, try and spice it up and entertain them. And I think that's the harder part. A lot of people can definitely write a post and kind of educate an audience, but my kind of flavor, my kind of own way about writing a lot of posts, I'm trying to entertain people. That resonates with my audience, with my ICP also much better. And that's the style, the brand that we want to have. We don't want to have this sort of the boring. I don't want anybody to think I'm somebody that's boring. I want to think people that I'm a person that's open to talk about stuff, a pipeline, bacon, have good time on LinkedIn, learn something. Yeah, that's what you're trying to build. But just be authentic. I would say, I think there's this topic about using AI. Learn how to use AI. I think a lot of people use AI the wrong way. There's definitely a lot of, stuff AI can help you with. But just to give you an idea, I barely ever use AI. So if somebody looks at my LinkedIn post, I don't use AI much at all. While other people are really great at using AI, using Claude and everything, right? So they're on that side, and that's fine. Whatever works for you, right? Yeah, just trying to figure out what is your style of kind of, because you want to commit to this. And yes, you're not going to see the benefit on day one, but it's something you have to kind of continue doing.
What if you're like a head of marketing or a head of growth, and your founder executive team doesn't really see the value of posting content or posting on LinkedIn specifically? Any word of advice you'd give to them of something they can try to, use to convince their
I mean, the easiest way to go about this is just ask the founder to give them access to the LinkedIn profile. The job of head of growth or marketing is to drive MQLs, as one of the things. And one of the easiest way to do that is to have access to the profile of the CEO, do a lot of great content, and generate a ton of MQLs. So yeah, and the CEO has to be willing to do that. Either give the access or just literally prepare the content for the CEO just to click copy, paste, upload the video, whatever, and off you go. And I think the other word of advice is, I'm not sure, like, is somehow, showing the ROI of that, right? But I mean, the bottom line is if your ideal customer is on LinkedIn and there's some form of active engagement, I mean, they're posting, they're talking about stuff, you're missing out. And the other way to look at it is if your competitors are doing it, they're probably seeing ROI. But also vice versa, if your competitors are not doing it, it's a potential opportunity because you'll be the only company on LinkedIn that's going to talk about it. But if you're not doing it on LinkedIn, where are you doing it? LinkedIn is the place for B2B. Like X sometimes, yes, but like it's a very different crowd there. But what, like, and you have to commit to it for at least 3 to 6 months. That's a minimum commitment. Some people do it like for a week or for a day, they just give up. That's not how it works, unfortunately. You have to have a plan, commit, strategy. Always say something that's going to be a bit of a pattern interrupt, a bit of drama, maybe, whatever, You need to, it can't be boring stuff as well, right? So you need to be also educational, not cringe, and just go for it and just track, then stuff naturally in a GA. What I personally do, and I highly recommend, is to have tracking on your sign up form, open field. Where do you hear about us? Guess what we
Mhm.
get? We get a lot of Frank, Frank, LinkedIn, Frank, LinkedIn. And you have a baseline, and then against the baseline, you can see how that's going up. And that means it's working, right? We have literally an attribution field in CRM called Frank. And you don't know whether the Frank is LinkedIn stuff, you don't know events, etc. But typically what happens is whenever we do something on LinkedIn, Frank stuff or LinkedIn stuff, the MQLs go up versus the baseline.
Yep.
So, and every time when you're doing this, if you're doing this consistently, you can see that, damn, it's working. Whenever Frank's not posting, then MQLs go down. Like you can definitely run a test, like for example, just, I don't know, post for 2 weeks and then don't post for 2 weeks and just see what's happening versus the baseline. So yeah.
Well, awesome, Frank. Thank you so much. This has been super insightful. There's a lot of great content that we're going to get out of this because we're going to repurpose this webinar. But this is also going to live up on YouTube for people to watch back, and we'll send it to everyone who wasn't able to attend fully. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Have a good rest of your day and happy holidays.
Happy holidays.